Welcome, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming to the third and final and keynote lecture of the Sustainable Mobility Lecture Series. My name is Tariq Racha. I'm a PhD candidate here, working with my advisor, Professor Christoph Reinhardt. We are teaching a course this semester, and I actually taught it because it's done today, called Comfort in Motion. And we have this website up, so if you guys are interested in seeing what we've been cooking with our lovely participants, you can download a PDF of the whole presentation that was done today, this morning with Mikael Colville-Andersen. So I'm not going to take a lot of your time. This lecture is co-hosted by Livable Streets Alliance. They're helping us promoting it, so thanks a lot for co-hosting and thanks a lot for coming. And I wanted to take this opportunity, because this is the last lecture, just to thank the architecture department, the School of Architecture and Planning, and even though she's not here, the administrative assistant, Kathleen Ross, who was amazing in pulling this all together. And let's not waste any more time. As an urban design expert and CEO of Copenhagenized Design Company, Mikael Colville-Andersen is one of the leading global voices in urban planning, and he focuses on reestablishing the bicycle on the urban landscape. He regards the bicycle as the most important tool in our urban toolbox for rebuilding our livable cities, works with cities and governments around the world in coaching them towards becoming more bicycle-friendly. He is known for his philosophy about simplifying urban planning and urban cycling and how cities should be designed instead of engineered. He is at the forefront of utilizing observational techniques inspired by the likes of William H. Whyte for pedestrian and cycle planning, and he has been called the modern-day Jane Jacobs. He employs anthropology and sociology in his work to develop livable cities and is skeptical about the weight we place on traffic engineering. Colville-Andersen has been instrumental in orchestrating the global bicycle boom, starting with what was later called the photo that launched a million bicycle in 2006, which led to the Copenhagen cycle chic photography and street style blog in 2007. He coined the phrase cycle chic in 2007, as well as the word Copenhagenize in the same year. He has also coined and popularized other phrases such as bicycle urbanism, citizen cyclist, life-size cities, and he started the slow bicycle movement in 2008. So just to make this clear, I basically was looking up things on YouTube because I'm a bored grad student, and I found a TEDx talk of Mikael, and I was fascinated. I was like, this is really cool. We should probably try to bring him and talk. So it was a great opportunity for me to invite him and him come over, which was great. And I just wanted to share with you that this has been a very exciting experience to have you, Mikael. So with his Bicycle Urbanism by Design keynote, he highlights what we need to design city streets instead of relying solely on engineering. Please help me welcome Mikael Colville-Andersen.
Thank you. And all this stuff here, you got to look at that. Seriously, this is why I came here today, to be an expert critic for these students from MIT and Harvard. And oh, now it's gone, but you have to download that because I was absolutely amazed. Thank you. By the quality of the work and by the way that they just nailed so many details in their design interventions for these 4 intersections. Really a complete and utter understanding of the best practice in bicycle infrastructure. I wasn't an expert critic today, I was an expert cheerleader, basically. I was just going, yes, 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 the entire time. So it was really, you got to check it out. It's publicly available, which is really great, because so many of these university studies and whatnot, they just sort of get read by the people in the room and they disappear into nowhere. So you really have to have a look at it, because it's something in this neighborhood and it's something very important. I'm the CEO of Copenhagenized Design Company, and what we do, if you don't know, is we advise cities and governments around the world in how to really gear up for what I call bicycle urbanism, really reestablishing the bicycle on the urban landscape. All sorts of projects, everything related to the bicycle, planning, infrastructure, policy, strategy, communications, all over the world. It's really quite a cool job. We like getting to work every morning. I like to point out, however, when I'm speaking in what I call a re-emerging bicycle city, a re-emerging bicycle country, that I am not a cyclist. None of us at our office, we're 5 people in Copenhagen. We have planners in Amsterdam and Brussels, an office in Rio now. None of us are what you guys sort of regard as cyclists. We're just people who happen to use bicycles to get around, man, because it makes sense. It's just the quickest, most convenient way for us to do so. In Copenhagen today, it didn't look like that. It was colder. It was just above freezing today in Copenhagen, but really it still just looked like that. 80% of Copenhageners ride all through the winter. But the point is, actually, in Copenhagen today, there was more people riding bicycles for transport than in the entire United States put together. I don't know how you feel about that. So sorry about that, but the point is, yeah, there was maybe more hats and scarves and gloves today because it was chilly and dark and the Nordic winter has embraced us. But none of these people, 99% of them are not cyclists as either, you know. They're just people like me who happen to use a bicycle to get around. That really is the baseline for everything I want to say in this talk today. Another shocking revelation I can give you here is that, you know, I come to you from Copenhagen. This is the foundation of all of our philosophies and all of our work, the Danish and also the Dutch experience. But I was actually born in Fort McMurray, Alberta, Canada, the tar sands capital of North America. I grew up in the oil capital of North America, Calgary, you know. So I come to you with, you know, from the Copenhagen, the European experience regarding infrastructure design, with my own philosophies as well. But really, you know, I do so with a deep and intimate understanding of the North American you know, situation and culture and experience. So it's really important to consider when you come to North America, you got to kind of say that. Otherwise, you guys are going to go, this is really interesting, but oh, that's Europe. You know, oh, it'll never work here, you know. So I have to sort of say, I know, you know, I can see both sides of the Atlantic. So I'm going to talk a lot about bicycles, you know, weird when you're not a cyclist, but that's what we do. It is the most important tool in our urban toolboxes for rebuilding our livable cities, our life-size cities. But I want to start with the foundations, really I have a clicker, I keep doing two things here. There you go. I want to start with really the streets of our cities, the fundamentals, you know, the spinal cord and the skeletal structure of our cities. For 7,000 years, since cities first were formed, streets were really the most democratic spaces in the history of Homo sapiens. Nothing beats the streets for democracies. We did everything in the streets for almost 7,000 years. We transported ourselves, sure. We gossiped, we flirted, we met our future partners in the streets. We bought and sold our goods. Our children played. There were extensions of our homes, extensions of our living rooms. Everything was in the streets. Two things happened to change this perception of streets that lasted for 7,000 years. And the first thing was really the urbanization in the late 1800s, the early 1900s. Engineers were the urban heroes of the day back then, tackling any and all problems that cities could throw at them, doing an amazing job. We have so much to thank them for in our cities today. But there was a problem of traffic safety that came out of nowhere when the automobile appeared in our cities for the first time and started doing what it's still very good at doing, killing people in our streets. And the engineers this is the way it worked. The engineers they were handed the problem of traffic safety, almost out of desperation, because they were solving all this other stuff. And really what happened was that almost overnight, streets became regarded as public utilities, like sewers, electricity, puzzles to be solved with mathematical equations. This was a major paradigm shift, and it happened really almost overnight, from these human streets where everything happened to mathematical equations. It was a massive change on the way to this change of perception. The other thing that happened was that the automobile industry had a bit of a problem. They had these shiny new objects and they wanted to sell a lot of them, but really this is something called the anti-automobile age. One of the best books you can read about all this is Fighting Traffic by Peter D. Norton. The history of the anti-automobile age and motordom, as he calls it. They realized that they had a problem. Everybody hated them. Motorists were despised. Cars were detested. You could almost get lynched out of your automobile, for running over a kid in the street. And so they started using tactics that they're still very good at today: marketing, spin, and good old public ridicule. You know, when I'm in Europe and I'm doing this talk and I have to explain the idea of jaywalking, you imagine that there's a concept that says you can't cross the street in the middle of the block, and Europeans are going, that's weird. You know, but you guys know it, right? So it's an American thing. It was the automobile industry who started using this phrase, jaywalking. A jay, back in the day, was a derogatory term for a country bumpkin, a redneck who came to the city and didn't know how to walk on the busy sidewalks and was bumbling around, right? So they took that word and they said, right, anybody who crosses the street in the middle of the block is a jaywalker. They enlisted Boy Scouts to hand out flyers and cards to people, chastising them for their behavior. A 7,000-year-old habit had to be stopped, and it had to be now because the streets needed to be cleared for automobiles. So pedestrians were all of a sudden having to be shepherded up to the corners to these newly designed things called crosswalks to stand there and wait for permission from somewhere to cross the street. Children were herded into these newly invented things called playgrounds. The automobile industry actually was a major player in designing the playground as we know it today. These little zoological gardens into which we throw our children while we check Facebook, Hi, wee, that's great. So this was actually the key factor. The playground really was the key factor because the last great bastion was the angry mothers. For some bizarre reason, they got pissed off because their kids kept getting killed on the streets. Imagine how weird that is. And the angry mothers had to be tackled. So the playground, see, now you can put your kids here. And the mothers went, good, okay, right. So they're not going to die anymore. No, they're going to bump their head when they fall off the slide, but that's fine. Finally, the coast was clear. The streets were clear of these squishy, irritating obstacles. And the stage was set for really what is the greatest paradigm shift in the history of our cities. And we're still paying the price for that all over the world today. This is my favorite quote, however, and I'm an optimist, and I quote this at every opportunity to anybody who will listen. Now, this is a politician who said this, and it wasn't the mayor of some Danish or Dutch town that you will never be able to pronounce. It was actually the mayor of none other than Paris. The fact is that automobiles no longer have a place in the big cities of our time. This guy was the mayor of Paris. I've lived in Paris. Nobody would have ever dreamed that city would become bicycle friendly, and it is now. He spent 12 years leaving a legacy. Many French politicians, they like to build big stupid monuments to themselves. It says, I was here. There you go. Seriously, it's a weird thing. But this guy said, no, you know what? I just want to make Paris a nice place to live. That's going to be my legacy, This guy is so cool. And bicycles were at the forefront of his revolution, his urban revolution. 20,000 bike share bikes in Paris. You might have heard about this. The most effective bike share system really in the world. And slowing down the traffic. In 2020, I think more than 50% of Paris will be a 20-mile-an-hour zone. This is happening all over Europe, by the way. This is the new standard. I know New York just went to 25, but 20 miles an hour, 80% of Barcelona will be like this in a couple of years. And he said, slow it down. You know what, that expressway that we built along the River Seine in the 1960s, take it out. Rip it out. Let's create a better city. There's a beach on the River Seine in the summer in August. It's called Paris Plage, and this was another one of his ideas. This guy, he's really. The thing is, he's not alone. Bloomberg even in New York were saying stuff like this. The cars aren't there for the streets aren't there for cars. They're for people to move around. Buses and public transport and bikes and pedestrians. Mayors in cities around the world, in Vancouver, even Chicago, in Buenos Aires, in Barcelona, they're all talking up the same talk. And we have a reason to be optimistic when people on that level, in those kind of cities, are saying this kind of thing. However, for the really the better part of 70, 80 years, the engineers of our cities have been asked one simple question. Engineers, we work them all over the world, they're problem solvers, but nobody's really asked them to solve a different problem. The one question they've been asked for really almost a century now is, how many cars, man, can we fit down this street? How can we increase flow and improve congestion? And the time is ripe for asking new questions of 21st century cities. How many people can we move down a street using all the forms of transportation at our disposal? This is the modern question. The model I made at the bottom, in Photoshop there, that has 5 times the capacity to move people down a street than the model that we just sort of inherited from a last century without questioning. There's a lot of cities that are doing this. This is not just some kind of crazy philosophy. It's time really, especially with urbanization on the rise now in our cities, again, this is important to change the question. But living in cities, however, makes me feel like I'm a character in the film The Matrix. Not even Keanu Reeves, just sort of some sub-character who's just bumbling along and accepting this reality and, not really understanding that there's another layer who's controlling everything. Our cities still today and the streets especially, are controlled by mathematical equations, outdated computer models. This is the standard for how we run city streets. And it doesn't really feel fair because I didn't go to any casting for this film. I don't want to be in this film. And yet, I have no choice. None of us have really any choice at all. We're in it against our will. This, however, it's kind of fun, but this is sort of a short history of traffic engineering. For 7,000 years, we were incredibly rational. We prioritized fast A to Bs for all the sort of the intelligent transport forms, or just the transport forms that had been invented at that point, which were the only ones they had. But then we can see from 1950, a little bit earlier in this country, but still around 1950, everybody just drank the Kool-Aid. And they said, right, here we go. Cars, let's make space for them. And you can see what's happened really since 1950 until now. You know, A to B for cars, and at the expense of everybody else trying to move around the city. You know, pedestrian, you got to push buttons to cross streets. I mean, it's bizarre. So that's really where we dropped the ball. Thank you. This, however, is going to be the simplest, most effective guide to traffic planning in a livable city you'll ever see in your life. You prioritize those forms of transport, and you make driving a car a pain in the ass. That's basically it. You know, all the people who use the three on the left, they're all intermodal. You know, if my bike tire's flat in Copenhagen in the morning, into the bike shop, pick it up later, hop on the metro, the bus, you know, I'll be intermodal, I'll combine. And we combine happily without even thinking about it. We know from 100 years of experience of cars in our societies that the motorists are the last people to change their habits, to change their transport form. You just can't pull them out of their car. No, I'm staying here. You can't get me out. We just know that. You know, they've been seduced by the bubble of steel and glass that they're sitting in. They don't want to have to like start, you know, emerging into society to be the part of the, you know, to hang out with the rest of us. We know that this is the challenge. All the campaigns in the world for ride a bike, it's good for you, it's green, it saves the planet, take public transport, meet your neighbors, all that. It's a complete waste of money unless we do the fourth line, unless we make driving a car difficult, expensive, you know, and inconvenient. That is the only way to move forward. Then the campaigns can follow. I call it A to Bism. That's all we want. Everybody in this room, everybody we know, everybody on the planet, we want to go fast from A to B. We want to go home to our families at the end of the day. We want to go to that cafe for that date with that girl or that guy we met and we're looking forward. We want to go to the cinema, to the supermarket. We just want to get there fast. We're like rivers. We'll always find the quickest route, regardless of our form of transport. If you make the pogo stick the fastest way from A to B, you'll be seeing people just like bouncing around the city, right? Of course, I would prefer the bicycle. You know, if you make the bicycle the fastest way from A to B in a city, any city in the world, regardless of topography or climate, the strangest people will be seen on bicycles. They're gonna figure it out pretty quick. I can get there quicker. Okay, boom. That is half the battle won right there. We know this very well in Denmark and many of the mainstream bicycle cities in Europe. But in Denmark, in Copenhagen, we've been asking people since 1996 in our biannual, the city's biannual bicycle report, what's your main reason for riding a bike? And 56%, the vast majority, every single time they say, oh, dude, it's quick. They don't say dude because they're Danish, but you know, you get the point. Dude, it's quick. You know, it's simply the fastest way to get from A to B. And 19%, they will say, oh, it's good exercise. It's not fitness, it's not spandex. It's just like, you know, I hear about this 30 minutes a day. I have to get exercise. And I do that on my bike, so I feel kind of good about myself, you know, riding along, listening to my iPod, you know, I'm moving myself, right? 6% do it because it's inexpensive. That's mostly students in Copenhagen who say that. And only 1% do it because of the environment, to save the planet, right? So this whole focus also in this country of, you know, to get people to ride bikes, we have to tell them it's good for the environment. No. These people are riding because it's fast A to B. This is just rush hour in a snowstorm in Copenhagen, by the way. So that's what we do. Viking biking. Yeah, I got a hashtag on Twitter if you want to see. I got loads of photos. Viking biking. Do you have any water? I need water. Something just to thank you. So we work with planning and policy, and we work with engineers and all these different projects around the world. But really, the focus of our company is design and direct human observation as a way of looking for new solutions for infrastructure, for intersection design, and whatnot. This is the world's, well, it's now the world's second busiest bicycle street. Now, another street in Copenhagen just overtook it, actually. There's about 37,000 people a day down this stretch. But it's really congested in the morning rush hour. It's super intense. Like, you know, you can miss like 3 traffic lights at some of the bottlenecks on your bike. But the city discovered that this spot, people started cutting across a sidewalk to get to a parallel street. And they'd never done that before. And the city, to their credit, in Copenhagen, they're going, okay, what's up with this? Why is this, what is this new mobility pattern? They stood back and they said, why? You know, they could have just had the police hand out tickets all day long for riding on a sidewalk, but they said, no, there's something up here, and we want to find out. So they did. The bicycle office in Copenhagen figured it out. They discovered that people were going to this new development south of the city, the new university buildings, Danish broadcasting. There's a whole new development we have. So there's all of a sudden a new mobility pattern that has emerged. And these people were just getting out of the busy rush hour, skirting around the city center. And the city decided to basically listen to these few hundred citizens of the city And they put in a temporary cycle track, the yellow on the left, painted it just to legitimize it. People are doing it, so let's legitimize it and see if it works. And it ended up becoming a permanent cycle track across this stretch of sidewalk on the right. The desire lines of just a few hundred of our citizens were respected. Infrastructure was put into place based on it. Desire lines, it has to be the most beautiful expression in urban planning. There's other phrases. There's a desire path. The Dutch, for some bizarre reason, call it an elephant path. Go figure. But you know, tramping paths through the jungle or whatever. But it was a French philosopher, Gaston Bachelard, in the 1950s, who coined this phrase, desire lines. And we are really fascinated by desire lines in my company. Desire lines are democracy in movement. You know, every single moment of every single day, the citizens of our cities are sending us secret messages. They're just, you know, like radio waves, like little text messages flying through the air. They're telling us what they want. They're doing it with their feet or with their bikes. They're telling us where they want to go and how they want to get there. A modern city has to listen to these secret messages of the citizens. You know, they're sending it all day long, man. It's just a matter of setting up the receiver and sucking it in. I love desire lines. You know, some people like bowling. I like desire lines. Basically, this is a view from my hotel in Halifax in Canada. The fresh snow on the commons. The old historic park in the center of the city. And the green paths are the original pathways, you know, perfect for promenading in 1852 on a Sunday. You look splendid today, dog. You know, and or running or going, you know, walking the dog or whatever. But I sat there and watched the morning rush hour from the neighborhoods to the city center. Desire lines carved straight as arrows through the snow. People walking but also riding bikes. The next day it snowed again overnight. I woke up, there I am like a little puppy dog at the window. I'm going, yes, same trajectories, exactly the same. A modern city will react to this. They'll watch, observe, and they will redesign accordingly. For the people living in Halifax now, not the ones that lived there in 1852, right? Pretty simple. Yeah. So, yeah, desire lines, you know, we take it, you know, really, really seriously, where it really takes up a lot of our time. It's kind of a product that we have in the company, but well, it started in 2012 where we decided to film an intersection in Copenhagen for 12 hours. And I had an anthropologist in, and I had her study the behavior of the 16,631 cyclists who went through that intersection that day. Nobody had ever done a behavioral study for cyclists anywhere in the world, and certainly not on this level. And you know, when you are Keanu Reeves battling the Matrix, you got to go to the next level, right? You have to do stuff like this to really hammer home some important points. It was a fascinating experience. I can tell you that no computer model in history can replace 250 hours plus of direct human observations. All of us sitting there studying other human beings and watching what they do. Absolutely fascinating. Using anthropology and sociology to redesign intersections. We found out stuff that nobody had ever thought about, you know. First of all, we have a conversation in Copenhagen, which is similar here, you know. A lot of people, all those damn cyclists, you know, breaking the law, shaking the foundations of our society with their bad behavior. Even in Copenhagen, there's this discussion. And I asked the most bicycle-friendly politicians we have, I said, listen, 16,000 plus people, 12 hours, how many people bent or broke a Danish traffic law? 20, 30, 25, 30%. No, 20, 30. You know, and I'm saying, no, you know what? It's 7. We found out that it was 7. And we've done this in many other intersections in Copenhagen. It's about 7%. So we called them conformists, the people who did everything by the books. We called the next group momentumists. Because, you know, when you ride a bike, the last thing you want to do is actually have to stop that damn bike, right? And hop out of the saddle and then get it going again. This is bicycle anthropology, right? So we figured if something was legal in another European capital, then it was okay in Copenhagen. So we call them momentumists, people who are doing stuff just to kind of, I don't want to lose my momentum, you know? And then we had the reckless, and these were people who blew like through red lights and who are riding on sidewalks, which we think is should be sacred for the pedestrian. So then you only get 1% who are really schmucks in the traffic, right? This has changed the conversation in Copenhagen. We've just done 10 intersections in Amsterdam, and they have the same impression down there, and they're going, what? In Amsterdam it was a little bit more, but still, it's changed the conversation. When you actually look at stuff and get answers, you know, you realize that nobody has looked at this before. We notice stuff like this guy here, he's riding through a pedestrian crossing. He's risen up out of his saddle. We notice that, you know, you don't have to be an anthropology major or, you know, have a PhD in anthropology to maybe assume that humans, as flock animals, when they're doing something that's not acceptable social behavior, they might hide themselves. They might make themselves smaller as an animal. You know, like when we're embarrassed, we cover stuff, right? And the opposite was actually true. We noticed that whenever anybody was riding along in whatever position they normally ride in, they would, as soon as they entered an illegal zone, They changed their physical form. They made themselves larger. Standing up out of the saddle, just rising up. And they also had this kind of a goofy look on their face, like, sorry. You know, they weren't looking at anybody in particular, it's just kind of like, I know. Okay, it's just over there. And then they hit the legal zone, boom, and they just assumed the position and then went off to work. It was really fascinating. So they were actually incredibly considerate to the rest of the flock. You know, they're actually making themselves larger, more noticeable, you know, and who would have thought? Seriously, it was really fascinating to discover. So, infrastructure, right? Despite 100 years of best practice for bicycle infrastructure, we still see crap like this being put into place almost as we speak. You know, this is a really bad example of bicycle infrastructure. This is from another European capital. And you know, this is an example of an engineer who's been told top down, an engineer who doesn't ride a bicycle, which is also a big problem, right? And say, no, you got to make some space for bikes now, says the mayor or whoever, right? Oh, God, really? Oh, squeezing bicycles into my perfect matrix. Oh, you know, measuring. There's a bit of space here. We'll, you know, paint it a funny color red or something, you know. And oh, bollards. We need bollards because you know, there's no reason for having bollards there. But you know, dong, 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 and they're not even. You know, look how weird placed they are, right? You know, this is not. So it has no regard for design, the human experience, logic, or safety. You know, and this is actually people are paying money to put this into their city. This isn't a question of creating space for bikes. It's a question of ignoring a lot of space off to the left. There's loads of street space, you know, but ooh, can't touch that, right? You know, but even though that would be the place you would normally put it. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of what you guys are up to in this country, putting bike lanes on the wrong side of parked cars. You know, if you think about 100 years of best practice, all of these planners who have sort of, you know, evolved for 100 years, made a whole bunch of mistakes, and and fixed them, and ended up with some form of best practice. You know, that's not part of it, really. You know, it's the best way ever devised to protect the paint job on parked cars. Just put some squishy people next to them, right? You know, and then the motorist can get out of his car, and you know, he has all this space there, you know, to pull up his pants, slam the door, you know, he's wander away, right? No, you put him along the sidewalk. This is what we've been doing really for decades, and it works. It keeps people safe. I'm really going to try and be polite about Sharrows because I'm definitely not a big fan. If you follow me on Twitter, you know, this is cities that have, like they say, some American cities say we have 300 miles of bicycle infrastructure, you know, and they actually have 2. But they have, you know, 298 printed pictograms in the middle of a car lane. And they're saying they're safe. No, they're not. It doesn't keep anybody safe. It doesn't encourage people to ride. The 99% who aren't on bicycles, who could be, they're not going to hop onto bikes because you painted a pictogram. You know, best practice is there, man. You got to use it. I was going to jump in. Okay, so yeah, this is actually, I'll talk about what I'm going to talk about here in a minute. This is Ljubljana in Slovenia. This is one of the best examples of copy-paste. Ljubljana, capital of Slovenia. I heard, I'm in Ljubljana working, and I'm doing a site visit, riding along to see this intersection. We had to do an intervention there, and I'm riding with the city's bicycle officer, and he's bitching about this intersection. Oh, it's gonna be, you gotta see it, it's gonna be horrible. And I'm going, okay, cool. And I said, what are we riding on, man? And this is like a Copenhagen-style cycle track. Oh yeah, that was put in the 60s. And I'm going, whoa, wait. Hang on. And he says, oh yeah, like in the late 60s, a bunch of planners and engineers from Ljubljana, you know, in the middle of the Cold War, you know, sort of went to Copenhagen. You know, I really hope they had like, you know, really kind of Soviet kind of, you know, jackets on and little Holga cameras with the little. I don't think it was that secretive. And they took a whole bunch of pictures, rode bikes around Copenhagen. Where cycling had fallen drastically after the car-centric 50s and 60s, but still, there was about 9% riding. And they went home and they said, this is what they do Copenhagen. And they said, we do that Ljubljana. Okay. So they put in 40 kilometers of Copenhagen-style curb-separated cycle tracks, like just because they could. And their cycling levels went from 2% to 10% in a year. Everyone, makes sense, I ride bike, boom, you know. And this is the greatest example. Cities are just cities, you know. It doesn't matter. An American city is just a city populated by Homo sapiens, right? Like it's not any bizarre kind of cultural thing. It's still just a city. And Ljubljana proves the point. In this Eastern European capital, they just fell out of the sky and people used it. It's the greatest example. So design. Water break, hang on. So design, what about if we used basic design principles, you know, to design, you know, to plan our cities and our streets instead of only relying on engineering? This may sound like a really simple idea, but it could also be quite radical. You know, if we, like this is actually Ljubljana. They're putting in a whole bunch of new infrastructure now. They're playing around with bike boxes, but they have like one-way cycle tracks on both sides of the streets. She looks pretty happy. What about if we design bicycle infrastructure like we design basically everything else? You know, every product that we own. And designing infrastructure for bikes or for pedestrians based on what designers use, the 4 types of pleasure. You know, physio, psycho, socio, ideal pleasure. These are things that they use when they design stuff. Design, you know, designers design for human beings, you know. The team that made the smartphone that I use, they were thinking about me. Yeah, their company wants to make billions of dollars, right? But that team's going, you know, we got to think about Mikael. We want to think about his 7-year-old kid and his 86-year-old dad, you know. Whoever designed this actually failed to be, we had this today, and everybody was taking their hands and they're putting it the wrong way. Intuitively, it should be this way, but it's actually this way. Anyway, so they failed. But I mean, generally, they think about the human being, right? It's a human designing for a human. Engineering is a human running a computer program based on projections, and you know, but there's not really a lot of humans involved in the considerations. So yeah, you know, basic design principles. What a concept. Like if we compare, you know, designing infrastructure for bikes with chairs, for example. It's the most iconic design object in history. There's like interpretations of the chair from the Neolithic period. We love, you know, designing chairs and making little things, models of them. You know, you look at stuff like this. We've all seen stuff like that. We can react to it however we like. Oh, it's a shopping cart. Oh, but it's a chair. Oh, I see what he did there. It's an octopus, but it's a chair. Right, okay. You know, you can love it or you can hate it. None of you have 4 of these in your living room, you know. It's like a thing you look at and then say, huh, right, I'm hungry. Let's go get something to eat, right? If you want to compare bicycle infrastructure with chair design, I'm going to be cheeky now, but this just might be the cycling map of Boston and Cambridge. You know, the guy's telling us it works. You know, he says, look, you can sit on this, you know, but there's bits and pieces of it. It doesn't really connect. There's lots of sharp edges, you know. The point is also that none of us have 6 of these around our dining room table. You know what people want? They just want a chair. That's all they want. They want it to work, and they want it to be, hopefully, to look nice as well. You know, what did you do when you all came in here today? You found a seat and you sat down. You didn't have to sort of take a moment to contemplate the designer's intentions. I see where she was going with that. You know, you didn't have to look for an on-off button or worry about whether or not the seat was going to disappear from under you in the middle of my talk. You just sat down. You know, imagine if riding a bicycle or walking in a city was as easy and intuitive as that. You know, the great thing is that it's possible. It exists in other cities. It's a thing. You know what I mean? It's not some crazy theory. Design is very, very powerful. And the seductive power of objects can transcend other important issues like price or performance. And this one example is this kid. This is my son Felix. He's 12 now, but a few years ago we were playing an Xbox game, you know, a car racing game. And you know, you get to scroll through all the car brands of the world, all the different cars that they've made throughout, you know, the past 60 years. And, okay, my kids, they spend about 5 hours a year in a car, right? We're not like anti-car home. We just don't have a car. We live in Copenhagen. We don't need one, so that doesn't enter the conversation, okay? How often do you people talk about cricket, you know? You know, like, did you see the test match between India and New Zealand? No, it's not something that's in your conversation. That's like cars for us. So this kid has no relationship with cars, and he's scrolling, you know, looking for a car to race against his dad, and he's going, oh, cool car. Oh, cool car, Daddy. And I start noticing, what kind of cars is he pointing at? It's all these kind of cars. Like, everything was pre-1975. I looked it up. You know, back when car design was cool. Some kid, it's like, you know, who has no relationship with automobiles was reacting to cool design on a product he has no relationship with. It's like a kid who's never seen snow going, that is a really well-built snowman, you know, right? And I thought that was amazing. The other story with him is the bike he's on. You know, Copenhagen, we have no relationship with bikes. We just ride them. You know, we don't geek out about them, right? We don't have bicycle culture. We have vacuum cleaner culture in Copenhagen. We all have one. We learned how to use it. We use it. You know, we don't fetishize it. We don't gear up for vacuuming. You know, we don't wave at other vacuum cleaning enthusiasts on the street. You know, it's just a tool to make our everyday lives easier. And that's the same also for kids. They love their bikes. My God, they ride their bikes. Then riding a bike, learning to ride a bike is that pivotal, the first real pivotal moment of childhood. It's amazing. And but this kid, you know, he comes home. He says, "Daddy, there's this bike outside the school. It's so amazing. You got to see it." Okay, great. And I saw it one day outside the school. One of the big kids had it, and it was like a chopper, like this, an old vintage chopper. And it was a Schwinn, actually. And I went, like, you like that? And he's going, "It's so cool." And I'm going, like, you know, you have no relationship with bike design. You just want the same bike as your friends do, right? When you're at that age, you just like, everybody has to be the same. Nothing weird. And he went, no, must have. And I found a vintage one, and I rode one of these in the 70s in Canada, you know, like, I went, that's kind of cool. So this kid, you know, in a city where nobody's impressed by bikes, we roll up on the cycle tracks, you know, and he'll have like an adult, you know, roll up next to him, a guy, cool bike. And, you know, and his kid's going, thanks. Little kids running along, Daddy, look at that bike. And he's going, thank you, you know. Good night, Copenhagen. So this kid is like experiencing status on his bike, you know. I thought that's pretty cool, you know. But we don't talk about it, you know. I just try not to really have long conversations about it. I just sort of observe. You know, this is not the best day to be riding a bicycle in Copenhagen or really any city on the planet, right? But these, you know, the seductive power of objects can transcend even the weather. These people are still out on their bikes because they know the infrastructure is going to work. It sucks today, but it's going to work. And they also know that in Copenhagen, that the city will be along within 30 minutes to clear it with our little bicycle track snow cleaners you can see at the bottom there. So they know it's going to probably be better, you know, even when on their way home. So they've been seduced by the well-designed infrastructure to use it even when it's not a great day to do so. Like I said, 80% ride all winter. In a snowstorm, that drops further, sure, but still, it's a massive amount of people. So it's the seductive power of design is really something very important, like the chair, right? Good design improves human behavior as well, nothing less. Like I said before, you guys have this conversation here, you know, you hear it all the time, you might even have thought it, right? Oh, those damn cyclists, you know, running red lights, you know, God, oh, what is up? It's like there's some kind of subspecies of human or something, but you know what? These people have not been given adequate bicycle infrastructure, even worse, none at all. Humans, Homo sapiens, react to design positively or negatively with their behavior. The little picture in the middle, that's rush hour in the morning. It's just people waiting for the light to change green. You know why? Because people, they have design. They don't need to break a law because it's been well designed. We don't all walk around our cities looking for opportunities to break the law, you know. Oh, there's a window. Cool. I'm going to go home to my kids now. You know, no, you know, we just want to live a normal life, have a job, fall in love, have kids, you know, go to a football game or whatever. You know, the people don't want to break a law. No design, bad design for infrastructure for bikes actually encourages it because they're reacting to it. It doesn't follow their desire lines. It's, you know, it's not intuitive and whatnot. So we have to listen. Again, same thing as the desire lines. So it's interesting to consider, you know, cycle tracks have been around for about 100 years, you know, more than that. The first one was in Copenhagen in 1892, sort of a dedicated facility for bikes, followed by New York, actually in 1894, and all over the world, right? So it's not some new fancy thing. But it's interesting to consider Danish design is a thing, you know, it's really a design-based country. My kids in their 3rd grade, they have design classes, you know, it's really a part of our culture. But it's interesting to consider 100 years of you know, trial and error, and has ended up with really a very well-designed bicycle structure, the infrastructure. There's only 4 types of bicycle infrastructure in Denmark. Not 2, not 8, 4. You ask me a question, you're saying, right, this street, we need infrastructure here. And I'll ask you 2 questions. I'll say, what's the volume of cars in a 24-hour period? Huh, okay. What's the speed limit for cars? Yeah, okay, that's number 2. Thank you. You know, and then it's put into place like in a week, you know, and then we all drink beer, basically. It's a very simple process because we've been doing it for so long. It's that best practice thing, man. If you do that, you save money. You get instant results. It's copy-paste. The infrastructure, I don't need to explain it. I mean, there's 4 types, so there's no infrastructure. It's a 20-mile-an-hour zone, residential neighborhood. You don't need to have protected lanes. When the speed limit hits 25 miles an hour, according to the design guide, it says put in a painted lane, it's okay, and the car volume is not so high, there's those 2 factors. A painted lane, but still 2.3 meters minimum in one direction. When the speed limit hits 50 or 60, you separate physically. You get a curb, you separate from the motorized traffic. As soon as you hit like 70, 80, 90 kilometers per hour motorway speeds, you just get the cyclist the hell away from the motorized traffic. You do not put bikes anywhere near a car that's doing, you know, 70 kilometers per hour. What's that, 50 miles or something? Around there, yeah. You get them away. You have a median. You put hedges between them. You just get them away. Bidirectional as well. This is one thing that's weird in this country is like the rise of the bidirectional lane where you have cyclists going the same direction. We don't do that anywhere in Copenhagen. We threw that out of our best practice 20 years ago in the city, on street. it's simply not safe enough. You have bikes coming from both directions. It's not intuitive. So we do it, but we only do it along stretches where there's no intersections. So along like a river or something like that. Then it's okay, but not in street with cross streets. So that's like, it's that simple. Absolutely everything we need to rebuild our livable cities, our bicycle-friendly cities, was invented at least 100 years ago. You know, that's why I say we got to go back to the future. Everything's right there, man. We try to overcomplicate. We try to invent stuff because we can, not because we actually need it. You know, this is where we have to go back to the roots, the livable city structure in a city like just, 500 years ago. Sure, you could die of tuberculosis. The sewers were kind of not very good. But I mean, still, that whole fabric of life on the streets and the way people moved around, it's kind of been proven. We have a lot of empirical evidence, right? And it's time to return to that. So big macro design, then there's micro design. This is another geeky thing I love, like little tiny things designed by the people for the people on the urban landscape. On the top left, there was one place, you had to go a bit farther along and do a loop around if you're on a bike. And at some point, some Copenhagener went, what do I have to do? I'm going down here, hopping up over a curb. And the next Copenhagener was like, oh, there's a track. Boom. A desire line was formed. The city, to their credit, they go, oh, God, oh, fine. Boom, there's a ramp. It's not a handy ramp. It's not a nice sloping ramp. It's just like, but at least we're going to put a ramp there, Manholes tilted up to the curb because there's bike racks, just on the other side. That's like some human made that decision to do that. It's kind of funny when in the middle, this is in my neighborhood, people were cutting across this grassy part. There was no path. And they were cutting across it. So this desire line was, like a yard wide. Oh, fine. So they put in the pathway, but they made it bumpy. Right? They made it kind of uncomfortable to keep the speed down and to try and encourage you not to do that, even though they kind of accepted the fact that you were going to do it. And then the people reacted on both sides of it by just saying, forget that. The people have spoken, right? But then on the right here, this is a backyard in Copenhagen. It's only offices, so, used during the day. And there's a little curb in the middle of this old backyard. And I've been up and down the curb, but you can easily hop your bike up it. Somebody went out and went, there's no ramp. Zzz, zzz. Now there's a ramp, And I actually went around asking everybody, going, do you know who put in the ramp? Nobody knows. It kind of appeared out of the night. Some person thought there should be a ramp. Oh, so I put one in, And I sat there in the morning where people are arriving at work. This is how, me watching this behavior thing. And people are come roaring into the backyard. And they kind of aim for the little ramp. Right? They're actually using it. It's bizarre. But it was wonderful. It's, anonymous user-generated design. We play around in our company as well. On the top left, we put up these Copenhagenized love handles, we call them, sort of like a handlebar thing that we welded. On light posts that are next to a stop line for bikes on the cycle tracks, just to see if people would use it. We got a little film on about it called Copenhagenizing Copenhagen on Vimeo. And, the first day in the commuting rush hour, people would sort of stop and go, what the hell is that? Whatever. On the next day, on the Tuesday, they're like going, what is that? Oh, by the Wednesday, they just go poof. They don't have to get off their seat, right? And then we didn't even anticipate this, and they propelled themselves, It was wicked, And then you could almost see people by the Friday sort of like speeding up a bit to get to the handle, right? So we did that, and then we did the garbage cans, we call it the has-been, because we didn't have a bin before, but now we have a bin. Whatever. But we just put one up. We didn't say what it was. Hey, there's a new garbage can for you, cyclists. We just put it up to see if people would figure it out. We want to see how they react to stuff. They sort of maybe rode past the first time and go, what was that? Huh. And the next morning, then they start throwing stuff in. And we analyze the garbage, too, like to see what cyclists, as we not are, but cyclists throw out. It's the same as pedestrians, newspapers, coffee cups, apple cores, cigarette packs, whatever. It's the same as any other garbage, right? And now we have in Copenhagen, we tilted garbage cans towards the cyclists, so you can ride along, get your 2 points there. So the city has actually taken that idea and made them. The city themselves have put in these railings and footrests at 18 intersections. So that you don't have to get off your bike, right? You just hold onto the railing, put your foot up, right? Making a fraction of the day for a fraction of the population of the city a little bit nicer, right? And the text there is actually a behavioral campaign we designed for the city. It says, hi, cyclists, rest your foot here, and thank you for cycling in the city. That's it. It's, hi, cyclists, insert the city's message, thank you for cycling in the city. Because we thought it was important that the city just started thanking these people for doing it, because it's pretty cool. Whoever rides a bike in a city is actually doing a pretty cool thing. This is a massive success, foreign journalists love going there and seeing that, and it really is a soft measure, inexpensive, and you're actually, doing something nice. water break. So we're like on the cusp of so many great things. We're moving towards a new paradigm shift, I really sense every day, all over the world, rethinking our cities. Bicycle urbanism is rising. The focus on bicycles all around the world is increasing every day. And now, more than ever before, it is really important to listen to the greatest minds in the field, the greatest minds at our disposal. People like Lulu Sofia, all right? I know that parents should talk about how great their kids are irritating, but this is my other kid. She's so amazing, no. But she's 7 now. And I call her, I have some articles on our blog about the world's youngest urbanist. She just says stuff. I don't talk to her about it. Like, I don't actually try to get her to say clever stuff. I just simply don't have the conversation. She just says stuff. You know, turn off the street into a quiet, like a cycle track. She's going, ooh, it's quiet now. Can't hear the cars. Okay, boom, I'm writing all this down. She just notices stuff. It's amazing. She started her career as the world's youngest urbanist at the age of 3.5. We were on our cargo bike heading to, I think it was a hardware store like that. And we stopped at a red light. And she was sitting there in the bucket there, and she looked over, and she said, Daddy. She was like, you know, amazed at the sight before her. She's 3.5, right? So she says, there's 2 people on a motorbike. This was like such a simple observation, but she had just never considered the concept that 2 people could sit on a motorbike. She was absolutely flabbergasted. And I'm going, yeah, cool, you know, maybe they're friends, you know, as a lady sort of hugging the guy, and I'm going, yeah, they can talk while they're riding the motorbike, you know. Hey, look at you and me, we're 2 people, we're on a bike, we're talking, you know, kind of the same thing. Yeah, it's amazing. And we continued on and stopped at a red light further along, and I realized in retrospect that she had been intensely observing her urban theater, looking for other examples of 2 people doing this, 2 people doing that. This is like just changed the way she thought. And we get to another red light, and she's kind of quiet. She's kind of disappointed. She says, Daddy, cars are silly. I said, oh, okay, well, why are cars silly? She says, I can't see the people in them. You know, I can see 2 people doing this and that, people on the bus, but she could, you know, this 3.5-year-old nailed it, the social exclusion of automobile society, right? The anonymity of car culture. I can't see the human beings in that form of transport, and it irritates me, right? This is a very natural, pure thing from this kid who has, again, no relationship with cars. You know, so that was just like amazing to hear this. So she continues her little journey. This is a few years later now. I think it was 2 years ago. We're walking through the city. You know, oh wait, I'm the dad, so I got my hand down here. She's the little kid doing that, right? And we're walking along, and we're waiting for to cross the light. You know, waiting for the Matrix to give us permission to cross the intersection. And she was just sort of looking around, and she says, Daddy, you know, when will my city fit me? You know, this is this little. When is my city gonna, you know, when you're a kid, you know, yeah, when you stare at our asses all day long, you know, how nice is that? Seriously. You know, garbage cans are like basketball hoops, you know, buildings are like, oh my God, every building's the Empire State. And she was just like, when's my city gonna fit me? And I said, you know what, look at your brother, he's bigger, he grew, you know, eat your vegetables, you know, and she's going, yeah, and she was like, yeah, I know, like, you know, I know that. But it was just kind of a frustration, and that really made me think. I'm going, you know, does my city fit me? You know, and the cities that I work in, that I travel to, do they fit me? So there are places in Copenhagen, the world's busiest bicycle street. You know, you got a 4.5-meter wide cycle track in one way. You know, narrow car lanes, you're crossing the lakes. You know, oh, my city fits me there. You know, it's like, you know, peas in the pod. Then you have other streets also in Copenhagen. You have a nice cycle track, sure, but like it's like, you know, weird architecture. Nobody really thought it out, and big car lanes and, you know, 8 lanes of traffic and stuff, and I don't feel that my city fits me there at all. I feel out of scale with my environment. It doesn't have to be, you know, architecture that decides it. You can stand on Times Square, which I was doing, you know, 2 days ago, and whenever I go to New York, you know, and, you know, that was, you know, this witch's cauldron of traffic, you know, and now there's just people like, you know, eating ice cream, you know. It's just nice, yeah. You know, they just put out all these benches and everything. They transform Times Square in New York. Nobody would ever dream that was possible. So it doesn't have anything to do with like the size of the buildings and stuff. But, you know, I mean, it really is, this is what Lulu Sofia gave me, was this idea of the life-size city. This is a phrase that we use all the time. This is, you know, a city should be life-size. You should be able to walk or cycle or do whatever you want to do in a city and feel at scale with the urban environment. All from the mouths of babes, or babe, singular, I guess, but. So yeah, Lulu, she rocked it, and I went, wow, what are kids capable of, man? You know, and so I went back to Felix, and I said, you know, I went into his classroom when he was in the 3rd grade. That's about 4th grade for you guys. It's a bit different, but so you have it, you know, gauge the age that we're talking about. And talked to the teacher, and I said, well, I want to come into the class, and I said, hey, there's this thing. It's called urban planning. Boring, never mind. But what I want you to do is to go out to the roundabout outside your school that you all use 6 times a day to go everywhere in our densely populated neighborhood. And I want you to redesign it. You know, it's Copenhagen, so it's not like dangerous, right? But I mean, I said, you know, I want you to make it safer for bikes and for pedestrians. Totally chaos in the morning at the drop-off hour like it is really around any school. So make it safer, and while you're at it, try and think about how you can get people out of their cars and to use other forms of transport. See you later, see you next week, you know. And the teacher continued it, and you know, he didn't tell them too much about urban planning. We didn't want to, you know, warp their minds. We just wanted that pure thought from them. And it was amazing. It was really a joy to behold. They divided up into teams, you know, and went out on site visits, did lots of drawings, and really took it seriously. Went back into the classroom and discussed, and the teacher was like, well, I don't have to do anything here. It was amazing, these kids. And they ended up making a fantastic model out of milk cartons at the top there, you know, with their final vision, their retrofitting intervention of the schools around the roundabout outside the school. And it was really great to see what they had developed. When I went back into the classroom and say, you know, tell me what you learned. You know, one of the kids says, you know, why don't we just make cars uglier? Then, like, nobody's going to want to drive an ugly car, duh, right? And it is duh, right? It's like logic, of course. You know, imagine if cars were, like, really stupid looking. You know, people wouldn't drive them. Then they nailed this, like, 15 kilometer an hour. It's like about, 10 miles per hour. We should have speed limits around the school that is 15K, right? And I'm going, how do you get that number? Like, seriously, teacher, did you tell me? He says, I didn't say anything. I said, how do you know that? And they go, I don't know, it just kind of feels slow, you know. And they were like, none of them could answer how they found that number. They had no way of knowing that 15 kilometers per hour, 10 miles an hour, is the average speed for cycling in Copenhagen. When the number that we settle on, when 400,000 people a day all ride a bike, the average is about 15. And so that is an incredibly decent speed for cars around a school, or really in any city. That one just amazed me. So yeah, a fence to separate the cycle track from the roadway, probably not necessary, but this is the way that they were thinking, right? Light signals, forget the roundabout, just put in lights, because they all have that experience. And I talked to them, the cars are so kind of angry in the morning, but all through the day as well. Like they don't feel totally safe crossing the street. One-way streets for cars in the neighborhood. This is actually something that a lot of cities do. They nailed that one. Speed bumps. You know, everything was like making driving difficult was the way to fix their experience, their user experience with this roundabout. Their pièce de la résistance was, hey, we also, while we're talking to you, Michael, we want glass roofs on all of the streets and sidewalks everywhere forever. Okay, because we don't want to get wet anymore in the rain and the snow, and we can all appreciate that, right? Because that's a totally great idea. So it was a joy to work with these kids. Thinking like these kids, I realized, just frees our minds, with this logic and rationality, cutting all the crap away, and that's just what they give us. It's amazing. We all laughed with the glass roofs, but this actually exists. In Copenhagen, we have, on all the main arteries now, we have the green wave. You have this in a lot of cities for like cars. If you drive, 30 miles an hour, you're going to hit green the whole way on a long stretch. We do this for bikes. So you have like, 16 miles an hour, 20K anyway, and you'll hit green all the way to the city center in the morning rush hour. Then the traffic lights are reversed in the afternoon, so you get like an electronic tailwind all the way home. Right? So this is the same simple logic and rationality. You don't want to stop and get off your bike. You want to have that experience of flow, and the city has done that. In the Netherlands, as we speak, there's 3 cities testing. They have a lot of cross streets, which is only for bicycles, like a cycle track crossing a street. And they have sensors on the stoplights. So if it's raining or snowing or the temperature falls below a certain degree, the traffic lights for bikes are prioritized 3 to 4 times more than for the people in the cars, because they're just sitting there with the heat in the winter, right? Sitting there with the heater on, listening to ABBA or whatever they do. But the cyclists are going, damn, it's cold. Okay, so boom, they're just prioritized. Getting these people home to their families. They're off to work quicker in the morning. It's the same logic and rationality that these children are teaching us. The last great mind there's probably more, but this is another one. This is William of Occam, the greatest bicycle pedestrian advocate in history. He doesn't know that because he died in 1347. But so to him, the principle of Occam's razor is attributed, right? Mostly used in mathematics and science. And basically the gist of it is, the simpler explanations are generally the better than the more complex ones. If you have a whole table of solutions, If you choose the simplest, most rational one, you've probably chosen the best one. We use this all the time in our company. We do a project, we're going right, Occams razor, you know, it's this big razor, falls down on the table. Let's cut away this, you know what, this is the best solution. It's really an interesting way to really plan cities, do anything in cities, is to consider, especially now where we overcomplicate things by designing stuff because we can, as I said before. But this is really, you know, an important thing to consider. So this all begs the question, you know, what would our streets look like if our main consultants, seriously, if our main consultants were teams of 5-year-olds, 3rd graders, you know, young design students and a 13th century religious dude? You know, they're all sitting in the room there going, how are you going to do this, you know? What would they look like? I think they'd be beautiful. I think they'd work better than they're working now. If you consider the fact that there is a 9/11 every single month in this country and the European Union, we're not exempt from that, you know, for the past 60 years, 35,000 people a year dying in car accidents, 9/11 every month, you know, they would be safer, these streets, if these people were the ones that we listen to. They would be safer than at any point in the last century. And that is really something important to consider. So, you know, Copenhagen, blah, 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 blah. You know, people are kind of getting tired of Copenhagen. Oh, it's so amazing. It's on, they ride bikes, you know. Oh, they built a new bicycle bridge, you know, Amsterdam, blah, you know. But it's not about Copenhagen and Amsterdam anymore. It's really important to point out. Yeah, we do the Copenhagenized Index of bicycle-friendly cities every 2 years. Next one's in June next year. You know, and you know, yeah, you got your Copenhagen and your Amsterdam at the top there. You have some usual suspects. I want you to look at the ones, you know, the zeros to heroes, I call them. Buenos Aires isn't on this one, but Budapest, Barcelona, Paris, Seville, Dublin. There were no bikes left in these cities. Like seriously, no bikes left in these cities just 7 years ago. They had been pushed out and they hadn't returned. Dublin was the 3rd great cycling city of Europe after Copenhagen and Amsterdam until the late 40s, you know. Now, oh, they're all of a sudden on this index, you know, and like Seville went from 0.2 on bikes to 7% on bikes in only 5 years. You know, Dublin went from 0 point something, whatever, to 10% in the city center, you know, 4% citywide. Barcelona's at 4%. Paris is pushing 4% now. You know, these cities are doing it. What are they doing? Bike share helps, right? You got that here now, right? But I mean, bike share helps. Traffic calming, slowing the streets down, and infrastructure. You can't have bike share if you don't have anywhere to ride the damn bike, right? This is the trinity that is important. And these cities are rocking it. They're doing what Copenhagen and Amsterdam did over the past 40 years, really, in 5 years. Buenos Aires is going to be the next rising star. In the last 2 years, they've put in 140 kilometers of protected lanes. You know, like literally 2.5 years ago, they had a street, there was one guy named Juan riding a bike. I'm so alone, you know. And now there's 5,000 people a day on that same street, together with Juan. Juan has friends now on that street, you know. And Buenos Aires, they're just rocking it, you know. The mayor just understands it and they're just doing it. So this is really, you know, Copenhagen, yeah, great. Amsterdam, yeah, great. But now there's a new game in town, right? There's a new, you know, the leagues are dividing up. You know, you got your Super League, your First Division, Second Division. So you got to figure out which league you want to play in, right? So here at the end, you know, what we're doing, you know, planners and engineers, so often in our job also, you know, we're designing one cycle track on one city street. We're geeking out on the tech specs and the details of the designs. We're focusing on tiny little things in a big picture. It's really important to remember that we're building monuments. You know, Copenhagen, we have like the world's most ridiculous monument. It's this little naked green woman on a rock in the harbor, staring wistfully out into the sea. You know, the Little Mermaid. You know, and it's a great fairy tale, but I think, oh, seriously? You know, this is like Copenhagen's monument? No, I think the greatest monument we have ever built is the bicycle infrastructure network in our city. You know, and the same in Dutch cities. It's an open source monument. Everybody can do it. And these monuments are rising all over the world now, where, you know, like not just the guy in Paris, it's happening everywhere. It's happening here. You know, some of the infrastructure I've seen here today, it's happening. You know, there's bricks. The piles are bigger in other cities, but the bricks are being laid. And we're all the architects, we're all the designers, all of us that live in these cities, especially those of us who work in planning and in engineering. We're all designing and building the greatest monuments, really, in history. So, you know, geeking out on this little tiny detail, remember, when you get out of bed in the morning, just living in the city, you're part of the game, right? You're placing the bricks, you're creating the greatest monuments that people have ever erected. Remember the big picture. I'm going to leave you with this, my favorite one, my second favorite quote. Cities are erected on spiritual columns. Like giant mirrors, they reflect the hearts of their residents. If those hearts darken and lose faith, cities lose their glamour. I love that this is a 900-year-old quote, about cities. More true today than ever before. That's the goal for all of us, working in planning and engineering, just living in cities, wanting our cities to be better. We have to work towards making the hearts of our, the citizens stronger, brighter, not letting them lose faith, and creating the greatest monuments in the history of cities. Thank you.
So if you want to ask Mikael questions, you can come over here. There's a mic. We have some time for questions.
I'm here all week. Tip your waitress.
Sorry, can I do a quick welcome? That was great. Want to do a quick welcome. Jeff Rosenblum from Livable Streets Alliance. We're co-sponsoring this event with Tariq. This is amazing that you all came. A couple quick things about Livable Streets Alliance. I co-founded Livable Streets about 10 years ago. It's almost our 10-year anniversary. To try to operationalize the things that Mikael is talking about. I'd say the three things Livable Streets, the local organization, pushing for these things locally is all about is having a vision, something that you look toward and say, our city can be better. The second is design. A lot of people have been saying in the past, it's not about design, it's about education and enforcement. But finally, people are starting to recognize that it's really about how we design our cities. And finally, in order to make this kind of thing happen, how many people here would like to see all this stuff happen in Boston? All right, yeah. So that's what Livable Streets is all about. The way that we have found the best way of getting to the politicians and the designers and the engineers are through stories. So I have some postcards that I'm going to hand around. It pretty much says, I want livable streets because. We have found by collecting these stories from people like you about why you, the user, wants your city to be different, have been the most powerful interventions that we have had in order to get government to change. So I'm going to pass these things out. Finally, since we're at MIT, how many people here are engineers? All right, I'm an engineer also. 10 years ago, if we had an event like this, there would be no engineers in the room. Things have really changed. I want to appreciate all the engineers who are here who recognize that this is more than just about planning or engineering, but it's about the bridge between planning and engineering. So again, I want to thank you for your talk and thank you guys all for coming. I'm going to pass out these. If people want to fill them out, we will get them to politicians and it will make a difference.
Cool.
Thanks.
My name is Marlies Henderson. I'm from Billerica. That's a suburb. Why do you speak about cities all the time? Mm-hmm. Can we have the same energy to change our suburbs?
Yeah, good question. You all heard that? Just to check the, yeah. Carpet, sweeping and doing everything all at once. Of course, that's what we all would like. I mean, I focus on cities in my work. I've only lived in cities, so that's my angle. But I know people who live in the suburbs. No, but I mean, it's of course it's important. But where's the low-hanging fruit, right? There are 50% of Americans who live within like 5 miles of their workplace, right? We got to change somewhere. We got to start somewhere, and there is a focus now with urbanism. That this street could be nicer, and like it or not, I think stuff happens in the cities first, and then it rolls out, right? So it's a bigger picture. It's a longer journey, and there's no reason that a certain suburb can bond together and do some really great stuff. But if we have to start somewhere, we've got to go for the low-hanging fruit. In the city is where the people who are maybe receptive to this modern message now live, and then things happen. We see it. There's certain examples of for example, in Rio de Janeiro in 1991, they had the world's first climate summit in 1992, the Rio Summit, right? And before the world came, Rio went, oh, damn, we should do green stuff. It's a climate conference? Damn. Okay. So so they built they took away a lane of traffic along the Copacabana, and they made a bidirectional cycle track going, see, we're green, man. This is like 20 years ago, right? And what happened after the world came and left, the next neighborhood went, hey, that's pretty cool. Can we extend it? Can we extend it? Extend it all through the city. So it's it's on that list, I think. And that was if it happens somewhere, you kind of have to do it in the next municipality, in the next suburb. But we got to start where we got the easy win. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Bersu from the Boston Cyclists Union.
Hi.
Hi. I had two questions. One, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about how you deal with snow in Copenhagen, because a lot of the times we're told we can't put in a better facility because of the snow removal situation. And the second thing is I've been looking at your blog for a long time. I really enjoy it. I feel like there's a paradox between what you're saying about sort of the vacuum cleaner, utility of bicycles, and then all the style that you emphasize in the blog. And I was wondering if you could talk about that paradox.
Yeah. So snow, yeah. So the city of Copenhagen prioritizes the cycle tracks when there's snow. I think you probably get more snow here, but we also can have like wicked snowstorms, you know. The cycle tracks are prioritized first. In a snowstorm, the little cycle track cleaners buzz up and down 6-7 times before the roads are even touched. So we have cycle tracks and we have all the roads divided up into A, B, C roads, right? Prioritized. And that for us, it's like a necessity. So, you know, if the cycle tracks had like, you know, this much snow on and everybody went out to go to work with their bikes, they're going, I can't ride it. Like, nobody can ride in that. You know, what would happen? The public transport would implode. There'd be all these people waiting at bus stops and train stations. A lot of people not going to work, you know, which is not good for, you know, society if we lose all these man hours. So they have to prioritize it. In other cities like here, you know, you should be able to count on bicycle infrastructure like you count on a train timetable, right? That train leaves at 12 every day. The train to New York, they sell up. Boom, you know it's going to leave at that time. Although the train was late when I came here. But anyway, never mind, bad example. German trains, Swiss trains or something, whatever. But yeah, you have to do it to encourage. You got to be, you got to be able to know that the tracks will be clean. You have that thing with the cycle tracks on the wrong side of the parked cars. You know, we have it separate over here. We have a system in place for like decades about where the snow goes. You know, and this is not just Copenhagen. You know, there's loads of northern cities with high cycling levels. You know. There's actually a winter cycling conference in every year. This time it's in the Netherlands in February. And this is just people hanging out at a conference for 3 days talking about winter cycling. How do you deal with that? How do you do it? How do you encourage it? I mean, the focus, you're probably talking about the Cycle Chic blog. Yeah, with the style, I mean, that just came out of nowhere. It became a thing. And it's not like, you know, the word chic in America has a different connotation than it does in the rest of the world, I've discovered. It's just sort of like fashionable. It's like no big deal. It's just regular people on bikes. I mean, really, we say like, you know, I dress for my destination. I don't dress for my, you know, my journey, right? And that's selling this message that you don't have to gear up massively to ride a bike, which is something in this country is a perception. To have a bike, oh God, I need to have like that fancy bike and I need to have all of this gear. So it's just selling the message that, you know what, all you need is a bike, man, you know, and that, you know, an old Schwinn or whatever. It's just, you know, people riding bikes is just a good thing. You know, however they do it is great. So that's been the focus. That's what people took out of that, and that's why it sort of expanded. Yeah. Cool, man.
Hi, my name is Andrew. I'm from Cambridge, and I'm wondering, do you think that wearing helmets all the time, as I think a lot of cyclists do in the States, even for everyday use, do you think it marginalizes cyclists or puts them outside the mainstream?
I have a TED talk for that. Seriously, like are you guys? So no, that's good. It's there. TED, Copenhagenize.eu.TED. But I have one about helmets, and I try not to talk too much about it, especially when I'm in this country, because God, I could talk for days. You know, or discuss for days. You know, it is interesting. There's, you know, it's a different situation here, I know, than in Europe, where we have from the highest level of EU government, don't promote helmets. You know, don't make it the law. This is from the ministers of transport from all the European countries. So there's like, it's a different starting point, right?
Very much so.
Here the conversation is more based on emotion, and you know, it's a big messy conversation to have. But it is, I mean, you know, in my personal opinion, I think, you know, if everybody, the Australian government actually invented motoring helmets, right? This is sort of the analogy I like to use. They actually found out in a study in 1999 that even with seatbelts and airbags, people inside of cars, they could save $400 million a year in reduced societal harm if all car occupants had helmets on. They meant, this is the government of Australia. It's really a big safety nanny nation, right? So they went, this is serious. They invented it. It looks like a skater helmet with no top on it. It's like, it's on, go to motoringhelmet.com and you got all my articles about this stuff. You know, and like that would make sense, right? And I've calculated you could save like something like $6 billion a year in America if all car occupants occupants had helmets on. So, you know, we're sending, you know, if you want to wear helmets or promote it, that's, you know, whatever. But I mean, where's the equal playing field for all the different forms of transport? You know, so I think that to answer your question, it's kind of like, you know, yeah, I don't know what kind of, you know, message we're sending. In Europe, we don't want to send that message that is dangerous, because it's not. Statistically, it's a very safe form of transport. So we know that from promoting and legislating it, people are saying, whoa, that's a dangerous thing, you know? If you had some gun shootings in some neighborhood and, you know, everybody said you got to put on a bulletproof vest if you're walking through that neighborhood now, you're going to go, I'm not going to go to that neighborhood now. You know, oh, you know, because one guy was shot one day, right? You know, oh, but now, you know, it's kind of, you're sending the wrong message. When you're working like I do to get people onto bikes, this is kind of a bit of a hindrance for promoting cycling generally. Yeah. What people do doesn't matter, but I mean, so, inform them, let them make their own decision.
I mean, I'm with you. I would just like get on the bike and go. But
yeah.
Then again, I'm like kind of from the generation where we didn't start wearing helmets right away. That came like later on.
Yeah.
So I mean, it depends on how you grow up, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, I saw the pictures of your kids and they didn't have
Yeah.
helmets on. So
Yeah.
I assume that the attitude's different in Europe. I know it's different in, you know, there in Japan and
Yeah.
other places, but
Yeah.
not here in Cambridge. I mean, people are like, they're armored.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I don't want to have the discussion anymore about helmets, but Chris Boardman, former pro cyclist in the UK, he's now come out as a bike advocate, and he said just recently, really irritated a lot of people in the UK, he was saying, you know, helmets aren't even in the top 10 of things we need to do to make cycling safe and make people, you know, ride bicycles. So there's like, you know, there's other voices out there. It's not just me saying blah, 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 right?
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to say a couple things. Lulu's observation about people in cars being insulated, isolated. Here in the USA, cycling is pretty male-dominated, and probably a lot of people in this room have seen it, the video that went around a couple weeks ago, the woman in New York City walking around, plain dress, catcalled 100 times in a 10-hour period. Mix all that together in the fact that you've been to a lot of different nations, cultures, how much, or sort of the, you know, if I was that woman, I'd want to be in a car. Insulated and isolated from the catcalling. Is there anything you could say that makes some sense of this or creates a direction we can go in?
Yeah, the catcalling sucks. That's what I can say about that. God, you know, like you don't see that really. That is one unique thing here, I think. You know, in the North American experience, is that you know, you ride around Copenhagen in the summer and it's nothing but heels and short skirts. You know, and you know, it's just the pure anthropology. You know, wow, that's nice legs. You know, or you know, that guy's hot, or whatever. You know, it goes both ways. But that catcalling thing is just like, yeah, it's a challenge because like the gender split is the key indicator for how you're doing. In cycling, in the Copenhagenized index, it's one of the parameters, right? What are the percentage of men and women riding bikes? Copenhagen, Amsterdam is 55% women, you know? Even in Portland, who think they're all that with their cycling, you know, they still only have 30% women riding bikes. It's a, you know, their challenge is like it's really kind of sports dominated, right? Like it is everywhere here, but like especially in Portland. So like you don't encourage it, right? You know, you don't want to feel like you're a part of this subculture. You just maybe want to ride a bike. Boy, I have no real good answer for the catcalling thing apart from that it sucks, man. Yeah, I know about it. I saw the video too, right? But I mean, it is a challenge. Yeah. So good luck with that.
Hi there.
Hey.
Great talk, fantastic energy, great presentation. I've been a couple of times to Copenhagen. I was there 4 years ago during the Jazz Festival in the summer, and I ride my bike everywhere on barricaded bike lanes. It's fantastic, and in response to that, yeah, the girls in the summer in the white dresses is stunning, incredible. And even Danish guys going, where were all those girls in the winter? Oh my God, it's like, that's not what I was gonna say there. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. When I was there 4 years ago, I remember them saying it was 30% of the workforce was commuting by bike, and they were aiming for 50. You were throwing out this 80 figure?
No, that was,
Oh.
yeah. Do you have another question too? Or was-
Just a little follow-up on that. And
Okay.
then,
Alan.
oh yeah, and I'll finish, then I won't say any more, right? So I am a cyclist, and we're dealing with an epidemic of horrific bike killings in America, and particularly in Boston, New York, you know, with trucks turning and all that, because obviously Copenhagen is state-of-the-art in the world with the barricaded bike lanes. So white lines is meaningless in Boston. I don't even want to go on white lines anymore because it's so dangerous. So we're dealing with such a monumental challenge in the typical city, which creates all the fear in the people and makes them go in their gorgeous, protected, armored SUVs with their families. So it seems like an unbelievable challenge. And I'm assuming you're aware of how many, it's an epidemic of horrific bike deaths on Com Ave, streets around here. And that's what the mayor who died was trying to get more barricaded bike lanes like they're creating in New York. So, I mean, I would love it to be like Copenhagen, but it's scary out there.
Yeah. All right, I can talk about those two things. So, yeah, 4 years ago, it was probably like 35. It's always been about, in the last 20 years, it's been about 35, 36, 37%. The way we measure it in Copenhagen, we count cyclists actually at 240 spots around the city. So there's a constant flow of information, of data coming in about who's riding and when and whatnot. And actually, this is interesting. When I talked about the way to make driving difficult is really the only way forward. This is right now. There's the greatest urban experiment on the planet. It's an inadvertent experiment. So we're building a new metro. We don't need a metro, but they're building one anyway. A new metro ring. And so 17 metro construction sites fell out of the sky all at once. And we have like central heating all over the city, like from the power plants, it goes under the streets into the buildings. So they decided to replace all the pipes at the same time. And so in Copenhagen, it's like, cycling went from 36% of the people who are arriving at work or education is the way they measure that. And it went up to 41% in 1 year, from 2012 to 13. This is a 5% modal share increase. It's never happened anywhere on the planet, and it's certainly not in a city where a lot of people ride bikes. It's incremental. And so there's experts being asked about this, and then I'm asked about it. I'm going, yeah, that's because we just paralyzed the city for motor vehicle traffic, right? That's the only reason. You can't drive a car at the moment because of all this construction. And then that year it was crazy. And I said, this basically proves my point. You make driving difficult, you get a 5% modal share increase, in 1 year. It's like Ljubljana, same kind of thing, right? And it was absolutely, that's what happened. So, right, it's really cool. So I've said to the city, it's going to fall. In 2019, when the metro is done, it's going to fall 5% unless you say, I get it, right? And they're kind of aware of this, and, I'm still nervous about 2019. But that number is the one that they want to get to 50%, and that's the one they're moving towards that. So yeah, horrific epidemic. Totally, it's horrible. Anywhere in the world, right? The number of people actually being killed on bikes in America is pretty stable. It's kind of weird to talk about this, but I mean, it is kind of stable now because bicycles are appearing in cities once again. It's the New York Post. My God, it's really hyped up a lot. So when a lot of the transportation alternatives in New York, they're out with studies saying, hey, it's actually safer to ride a bike now. We have more people riding bikes, so there's an increase in accidents and whatnot. But you know what? My point is, there is infrastructure. There are people who have figured out how to keep those cyclists safe. And it exists. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So that's the challenge. You do. You need protected lanes, absolutely. And that's what we know works, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my coworkers at my last job actually lost her life to a turning truck in South Boston. So those can't come soon enough. So I've actually been following the blog for quite some time, and actually the hook that got me into the blog was your frustration with a small fare validation spat that happened 10 years ago when you were coming back on a flight and you got charged. You didn't quite pay for the zoning correctly, and
on the metro.
Yeah, on the metro.
Right,
yes,
yeah, okay.
yes. So that hooked me into the blog because I was actually doing research for fare validation systems abroad because we have a really crappy one here, backed up by really lackluster laws and whatnot. But in any case, could you talk a little bit more about about how the installation of transit infrastructure, such as bus lanes, can leverage bicycle-minded infrastructure and vice versa, like bus lanes and bus lanes, or the subject of bus lanes at a road reassessment meeting, bringing up the need for cycle tracks and vice versa, and how has that really been leveraged in Copenhagen? Because it seems like the two are often at odds with each other. With some of our narrow streets, one of them is competing for resources. No, we need the buses because they provide better throughput. So as a transit advocate, how can we buy more cycling advocates from transit riders in that sense? And how can we buy more transit advocates from cyclists? Or, I guess, cycling advocates?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I don't have a long-winded answer for that. I mean, what we know is that any city that starts to, do the 3 other forms of transport, in Europe, the hot thing all over Europe is putting back in the tramways that they had for like a century, and then we all took it out in the 60s, 70s, 80s, putting them back. Bordeaux, so this is trams, right? But there's also BRT, bus rapid transit, that's emerging now in cities as a cheap solution to instead of building the tramways. But we know that whenever this happens, cycling increases. Bordeaux is a great example. They put in 3 massive tramways, like they fell out of the sky. Cycling went from 2% to 10% in the city center because all of a sudden there's trams. And they took away space from cars. So what happened? There's fewer cars. People felt safer. And they're riding along, in the city and hopping on their bikes because it calmed down the city. So like increase in transit and dedicated lanes for buses and whatnot goes hand in hand with increasing the number of cyclists. Absolutely. If you do it right, like Paris, they had the cyclists could use the bus lanes. But the buses in Paris, they stop very frequently. It's incredibly densely populated. So the bus gets speed up and then it stops again, right? So you can be ahead of the bus. In other cities, here, but also in Europe, I mean, the buses have a longer route. So that bus driver is like hunting you down, right? When you're in the bus lane. So it's different. But I mean, generally, increased public transport, as long as those buses or the bus rapid transit lanes or the tramways take away space from cars and make it, changing the question, then that will increase cycling. Absolutely. That's really what we see all over Europe. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Michael, thanks so much for coming. I want to tell you a little story to get your perspective because you help cities all over the globe with planning. One really nice thing that you bring is I've talked to a lot of Europeans who feel the way you do about cities and cycling, but they don't understand America at all. So they'll say, I don't know, America, you figure it out, it's your problem. So it's great that you understand North America. Well, so while you're visiting here, you'll see some nice bicycling infrastructure here in Cambridge. But if you go across the river to Boston, Boston had a mayor who became bicycle friendly. And this is all in the news, and people come and tell me all this all the time. Oh, you're from Boston. I heard it's really going big for bicycling and so on. Well, the fact is that in 7 years of being bicycle friendly, not one bucket of asphalt or one bucket of concrete has been poured for bicycling infrastructure. We have 4/10 of a mile of protected bike lanes.
Really?
1/10 of a mile here,
Yeah.
and 1/10 of a mile there that just completely ends when you approach the intersection. We've got bike lanes that if you look at a map of bike lanes, it looks like somebody dropped a bunch of matchsticks on a piece of paper. A little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit, not connecting anywhere, just wherever it happens to be cheap and where the road is being repaved. We do have a bike share system. That's a pretty nice bike share system. But otherwise, it's like a big charade that has, it's basically the public has bought it. The newspapers only say positive things about, oh, the city's doing great things for bikes. Now they have a plan that they're going to build 130 miles or 167 miles of cycle tracks in their 30-year plan. Well, we're at the end of year 1, and how much have they built? So 0. And we've got a 50-meter wide, 160-foot wide road that's being rebuilt. And the chorus is the same that I've always heard. Cycle tracks are a great idea, but they just won't fit here, Yeah. 50 meters, it just won't fit here. So you've worked with cities a lot of places. So do you have any advice for people who would like to
I got a hug for you, man. That's
to accelerate the pace of change?
No, I mean, yeah, I know that
like
sucks,
ours.
and in a way, means absolutely nothing. But you're not alone, right? I mean, there's a lot of cities that have this experience. I mean, in the North American perspective, lane widths are absolutely wide. They're wider than some European countries, You're sort of driving along, I'm in Croatia, now I'm in Austria, Seriously, man, and you know, there's like a lot of great studies, like from the Netherlands, actually, where you narrow the car lane widths to the minimum for the vehicles that use it. And motorists, we know this, they have to concentrate. If the lane's super narrow, you know, if you're driving down like a country road with trees, you're kind of really it's the same thing. Just like, you know, and motorists concentrating in a city is generally a good idea, right? But I've done this. I've looked in Calgary, actually. I was working there a couple years ago, and I'm staring down from the hotel at this one-lane street, Boston style, you know, like a North American street. And I'm just standing there, and I did it like for 5 days, and I'm taking photos, and I'm waiting for the biggest vehicle that would use it. And so I had all these aerial photos of this street, and then I went home and I just put it into Photoshop, and I took like I measured, it was really unscientific, but I mean, I said, right, there's about this much of this lane that's never used. This lane, there's like 4 lanes, right? This lane, this lane, this lane. And I had enough for like a 2.5 yard wide cycle track in one direction, like Copenhagen width, right? And no parking was affected. No, nothing was, that's the low-hanging fruit. And I say this all over North America, that's the low-hanging fruit. Lane widths, narrow them. You know, the parking can still be there, you know, as long as you put the cycle track on the proper side. But, you know, but I mean, you know, the widths here are amazing. I call it the arrogance of space. I have a lot of articles on the blog if you search for the arrogance of space. It's all of these, you know, the space that's allocated to just really a few individuals, you know, in really big vehicles, right? So that's the thing. That's, you know, I don't know if they're going to do that, but I mean, that's in that situation, you know, the space is right there, man. You know, it's democracy. You know, we need to reallocate. It's not taking away cars. It's like reallocating space to reflect the modern Boston, right? So good luck with that shit.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Albrecht, and I follow your Facebook page of the Slow Bicycle Movement, and I make comments on it. And I have a few things. One is, our bicycle lanes are generally like 5 feet, and I know some people think that, well, for commuters, they only need you know, that's perfectly adequate. And I know in the Netherlands, they think, and probably in Copenhagen too, they think in terms of bicycling as a social activity. And I think that commuter bike lanes also can be a social thing. So I was just wondering if you could talk about that. And then the other thing is, when we do our bicycle counts here, they're always during the commuter times. And I am not a bicycle commuter. I'm more of an out-and-about cyclist. And when I'm out and about riding my bike, there's hardly anyone out there. And you talk about, you know, I hear about mode shares of 60% of people or 55% of people riding bicycles and such. And so when we report, oh, you know, we have a 1% or a 2% bike share, isn't that great? But it's only in those certain times of the morning, but not in the other times of the day. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts might be on that.
Yeah,
those two things.
Statistics are irritating generally because, like, you know, like Copenhagen is really good at gathering data and counting people. Other cities aren't. So, like, you know, when you're working and doing what we're doing, it's really difficult to compare cities because, you know, like Portland. I love Portland. I know a lot of people there, but, like, you know, they say we're at 6% modal share. And I'm there in like end of October a couple years ago, and like I'm meeting the head of transport. I'm going, dude, where's your bikes? Like, seriously? He says, oh, it's raining. I said, this is drizzle. This isn't rain. Anyway, and he's kind of cool. He's going, yeah, I know. But they count like in June during bike month, right? Click, 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 click. And then they say we're at 6% because like it's bike month, right? So I mean, it doesn't really, you know. So it's really difficult to, yeah. You know, in Copenhagen, like during the day, yeah, there's not many people on, you know, compared to the morning rush hour. So it's, you know, take it with a grain of salt, all statistics that you ever hear, unless they're from me.
Well, my sense is that there's a bicycle counter that's out all the time counting bikes, and that would, to me, would seem to give a more true picture of how many people are on bikes. And people, there are not too many people that look like me out riding bikes. You know, an older woman.
Gathering data, I mean, a lot of it, especially also in North America, is like who's going to work by bike. It's that commuting focus. Like it's like going to work and back. It's not so much going, oh, I forgot, I got to get milk. You know, that's not usually counted. But I mean, so they need to start somewhere with counting and collecting data. So, but, you know, I agree. It's not, if it's not like super comprehensive, it's, you know, it's just interesting. It's not really.
And can you talk about the bike lane there is a protected bike lane here in Cambridge on Vassar Street, and it's it's not very wide. It's only really one bicycle width wide, and if you want to pass another cyclist, you have to go up onto the sidewalk and then back onto the...
So I mean, in Copenhagen, like the focus is, we call it conversation cycling, where the goal, we're trying to expand the widths of our cycle tracks now. The average is 2.5 meters, and now we're gearing up for more because we have like congestion problems sometimes with bikes. But I mean, the goal is that, you know, you and I can ride side by side, talk about whatever we want to talk about, and then a cargo bike, a three-wheel cargo bike could pass us. That's the perfect width. I mean, like having just narrow lanes, like the people planning for that, it's like they're just looking like out the window going, huh, there's 4 bikes. Yeah, we're just gonna, that's all, they only need it this wide. It's a problem. They're not thinking about who could be riding, planning for, you know, the evolution of the bicycle culture. So yeah, you know, super narrow, it doesn't, you know, it's like they're often just a bit wider than the handlebars, you know, so you don't have to all have super wide lanes so we can all just sort of hold hands cycling to work, you know. It's also like overtaking, you know. You don't want to have a cyclist having to go out into traffic to overtake you if you're a bit slower or whatever, right? So, you know, all this stuff has been figured out, you know what I mean? Again, like 100 years of best practice. So, you know, that's important to consider, you know, the widths, planning for the future. Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Yep.
So we'll make this the last question, and Michael is around for 15 minutes right after. You can ask him directly. So, last question.
Yeah, so I live in a town.
Are they quick? Are the other questions quick?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So look, I live in a town bordering South Boston, and I started the Safe Routes to School program through the whole school system. And I'd really like, do you have any talks about your urban planning in elementaries? Because I think that would be really helpful to get the kids interested then to...
What, that thing we did with my kids or my class?
Is that anything formal about that?
Now there's on Copenhagenized.com, like .eu is the company, .com is the blog.
Okay.
If you search for like school or something, you'll get all the blog posts that come up, and I have an article about what I did with those kids.
Okay.
That's why I don't have to talk about it, but I have it. There's an article about it on the blog.
All right,
Yeah.
because you know that program, which was invented in Denmark in the 70s, talks about the 5 E's, right? Education and engineering and enforcement. In your experience, and you know, you always have the parents who want to put the kids in the back of the SUV and drive 2 minutes and then be in this long line. Have you had any experience about how to get them out of these cars?
In Japan, which is like the 3rd great cycling nation, but still it's an a car nation, right? They actually have laws in many parts of Japan that say you can't drop off your kids by car. It's just like illegal, so stop doing that. And like, oh, what am I gonna do? So like they have to find out how to get there, and it's like the mums with the 2 kids on the bike and stuff. They've actually just said, you know what, we don't want pollution and congestion around our schools, so we're going to actually do that, right? And like slow speed limits, and you know, a parking ban around schools. There's lots of stuff like that in lots of different cities, right? But I mean, it is, you know, even my kids' school, it is like there are people who drive in Copenhagen, believe it or not. But I mean, they, you know, and they are the ones, you know, who are muscling their way through that roundabout and whatnot. So, but I mean, probably I don't know, the greatest campaign I've seen, it might be related. It's like that short trip thing, right? Trips under 3 miles. These are the ones. This is also the low-hanging fruit. Is like people who, you know, who need to go under 3 miles to go to the shops or wherever. You know, they're just like, you should do something. Don't drive. You know. So there's some really great campaigns out there for changing that behavior. But I mean, generally, you know, school should just be like the sacred temple where, you know, like surrounding the Taj Mahal. I mean, you know, you're not allowed to do anything there. It's like, you know, just walk. I mean, that school should be that, and just protecting them completely with an oasis of traffic calming. I mean, it's wild how we haven't done that also in Denmark in some places. You know what I mean? But I mean, there are good examples, like I said, in Japan and other places in Europe, who have really taken the bull by the horns and really protected the school. And you have to park a bit far away, but I mean, you know, it's hard to get the parents on board, but it's possible. There are good campaigns out there.
Okay, Mikael is going to be around for the next 5 minutes, but we would like to conclude this formally. So thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.